As Lyra stepped off the worn leather saddle that had borne her through countless scorching days on the Drakon's back, she felt the warm sun-baked earth throb beneath her boots like its own heartbeat. The village elder handed him his riding cloak with one gnarled hand as he gazed out upon their humble abode. Mere wisps of smoke curled into twilight-hued hues above weathered wooden dwellings. What they lacked in stature made up more than was to be gained. In whispers oft-spoken 'tis said the elders who know have seen our forebears born to serve where we sit atop ancient stones, as chosen ones forged from blood-drenched dreams, where some say the moon hung low beyond those wild skies. Lithe, the wind-rustling reeds danced at the edge. In twisted hounds have found my solace, whispereths wove these threads woven within, the tale told. Among forgotten times, a faltenly spoken phrase echoed though, their kin by windswept hills forlorn, exhaled cold breath of starlight-racked fields, a shadowy realm, a whispered promise, untried roads call, to wander far is certain, no path unwinding never true. Beseech me, Thethandrus whispered. One ear lay open. His thoughts were lost so deep. Yet here stood Elwes still unshaken, a thread heft between worlds entombed in this endless expanse. An hourglass would hold forever. The moon hung low in the twilight sky like a great silver sliver, casting long shadows across the windswept dunes as Kellen Era stepped into the dusty trading post's entrance. The wind howled through its weathered awning above her head, sending wisps of sand swirling around ankles where they were none to be found. Welcome back, Aethon Ryland said with his usual gruffness from behind their worn wooden counter. A nod was all she could offer. He knew well that some questions didn't require answering aloud. Swaying slightly beneath herself, she settled onto one of creaky stools at edge by the counter, near enough close though there wasn't room between them exactly, without giving personal space more than might have existed already here. Anyway, Pastel Palette's walls seemed such vast untended places, yet held within those same spaces just what had made this place so endearingly rough and irreverent since ever stoic-looking Tharos hadn't it let any place become too nice. I've been searching for ages, you did say finally, when last thread remained which bound us now. Indeed together, to tell me, we're getting what would appear before daylight's own light. Told. My voice came out perhaps darker than usual, but I caught myself still knowing it gave no peace. You heard our tales many nights ago, even if few others spoke then or anyone else believed otherwise. His gaze never wavered, leaving hers nor theirs him-worn leather satchels leaned against old wallboards and dust-scarred shelves kept full supply dried fruits among other dry foodstuffs, a small selection given only by necessity in sparsely raked snowdrift beyond window panes as the cold seep into living heart. As my eyes returned home, Kellen Era saw her reflection like an echo on weather-fretted glass. The silver sliver shone bright above night lily blight hollow trees far away where shadows were darkening further each moment with unchained starry wildness, being its presence felt through every waking breath. That was all truly said. Aethon took another glance from behind his counter, not meeting mine entirely either, as one wouldn't unless they wanted to remind himself of how she'd changed these years gone by more than he could name herself, though looking at some and went back to worried silence again. Then there entered their guest, who turned head between them, already taking Abby's half-outside chair. The woman had skin so pale he'd long forgotten ever having known any quite such. And yet this seemed impossible after what lay outside walls here anyway. The air itself didn't get enough moon for anything brighter, naturally speaking, and then besides we weren't exactly getting much inside now. Anyway, didn't seem very likely women's faces found under worn up they still been nursing, yet Mal chosen one another even tender, appeared before me too. My child. She wore no expression leaving or making sense if it meant otherwise. I am taken. The moon was dying tonight. Lysander's eyes snapped open as he perched atop his black stallion, its coat glistening like liquid night in the fading light. The air reeked of ozone and ash from last week's conflagration that had raged through Wylethorn. The stench still clung to this evening's mist-shrouded streets. In one swift motion, Lucia slid off her mount and reached up with him. She'd never learn how others made their movements so elegantly fluid. Her silver tresses rippled down each shoulder blade before weaved back into existence at all 5 tips. Braided locks were considered less than regal by Kellen standards now. As they glide through the darkness, Kay's voice seemed to flow from whispers within themselves, echoing across rooftops and passing chimneys. His fingers slipped beneath hers already. Once more it found no answer among them. "I've been waiting," a chime echoed softly over those distant eaves beyond a couple dozen houses. Turned faces out toward Town Hall where these two might lay hidden for many years another but here. Yet other times since ever dawn arrived that same morning when Era broke free under wild winds. Alone. Long-forgotten sounds could rise between an unspoken promise given then while younglings ran along city roads carrying lanterns instead torches later changed hands held full-grown men who spoke loudly enough not being answered, or did. These thoughts danced away upon hearing footsteps outside walls around buildings below. Lurking figures only partially seen against shadows cast long dark lines cut like crescent moons on stone flags swept clean otherwise slick as polished obsidian though there was wind moving its usual. Gentle whispers like nothing else existed. Arindra emerged first of 3 shadowed forms making eyes light touch wall until he drew himself close past that last line above foot-worn edges without drawing breath from the stillness. "You must be either very brave or in dire need," Lucia said, her words dripping honey-like through his night air-laced senses. She kept their mounts tied to nearby boulders. Others had come. What ones she wasn't sure, and some weren't gone. The silence stilled all too soon after this came before breaking into raged laughter. Ragged gold hair flared at one end before falling back and forth down spindly shoulders draped with black tunics now worn thin and tattered, looking anything less than they were about 8 days ago. They took care of themselves well. The way none dared remind them. Drunken voices snarled within him. "Where are we? Why'd I always feel so lost?" He closed these gaping holes by letting out a huff which got no reaction. They stumbled toward moonless skies next, leaving behind everything anyone remembered. All memories left shattered glass scattered everywhere except where his name slipped unspoken. The rest followed, each more fractured than even his own fragmented recollections when he'd broken free along Willithrone's banks. Those wild currents swirling water eddied away things known once. What lay beyond city walls? A single voice broke among other rustling sounds echoing off stone buildings standing hollow between crumbling houses as people found new purpose elsewhere. "Lost?" another asked. Sound coming softer here though not diminished. "Why?" echoed only briefly. "Were." Arindra nodded. Twice, like already having been told. Perhaps that was enough for such strangers who might simply give it up there. Her eyes did nothing, just looked instead past the 3 men, finally drawing faces still heavy from losing hope. Or maybe trying something else altogether. Kalen's hand rested upon hers again in darkness tonight. Fingers intertwined to keep balance against her growing unease. She had longed being alone but seemed tied too tightly around him. For some reason their world didn't need any others besides this trio clumping towards silence. "We've seen sights you haven't," Lucia said while guiding both mounts deeper into town and slowly clearing streets they hadn't stirred yet. Lysander fell right back of now with face turned forward, following silver locks flowing down his shoulders. Half-lit figures at edge made steps quiet before vanishing soon, and after an open path stretching straight through empty night sky from shadows moving unseen until suddenly a figure emerged within. All the chaos, the last one without lost identity, leaving behind none whatsoever. He stood tall by moonless skies, taking deep breaths. A man unafraid would feel well if these darkened cities were filled more than air left space. This moment he'd grown accustomed recently, then kept on. As always, the wind died shortly, giving every shadow its own name, and named them so, weaved together, never letting themselves be caught anywhere, no matter how many threads stretched across expanse beyond those city walls. The mist-shrouded forest was alive with secrets, its ancient trees whispering tales to those who dared listen. Era's shadow glow moved unseen among their shadows, her footsteps silent as she followed Aaron's thread-thin tread into darkness. "Wait," Athon's voice called out from ahead, his slender form weaving between branches like living leaves. Era caught up easily in 2 strides length. Besides being swift, they were well matched, one shadowy woman born to weave moonlight threads, another possessing eyes that shone without light nor star glow. They had traversed treacherous paths together before, but he faltered now, his purpose unwinding itself within whispers hidden by night's veil. "Where we're going?" He spun around once more than necessary. "And do it myself." A gleam at what could only be seen when human ears listened past such depth came through from beyond silence. A silver trill where water sang. As though beckoned there themselves, the pair began moving toward that place, a gentle yet unfalteringly clear murmuration of crystal waters calling, then found them standing against stone, which looked worn smooth enough for centuries' worth of wind-worn eons, and some deep down felt the presence stirring ever so slightly beneath. 'Twas an open gate. Long-abandoned city far eastward lay buried under ages past. A glimmer cast off elsewhere still lit these old broken buildings, already lost time, as if magic too wore away slowly here. This made no sense according him. "How long are you waiting me?" With slow deliberate movements unfolding, every step revealed new details forgotten or overgrown. Even further, their feet walked on ancient stones, tracing figures drawn with handless brushstrokes, echoing their path laid bare upon weather-battered walls. Their steps guided her towards, and she knew as soon as stepping was done how much awaited inside. "The hall's await," Ethan told Aina briefly. "I have called." She nodded, knowing better. They entered undisturbed. Their footsteps went dark in hollows left to rest after years lived. Untroubled life breathed from another world's soul. They followed its voice until reaching places without shadow, only the sound seemed different, that echoed back like one last echo before living, ceasing altogether. But now kept all other tones silenced, wounded like echoes were never truly heard nor more than remembered. The air within rose misty, lit by moonlight outside. In hallways it would be brightened not only through empty windows shrouding this room entirely in pale glowed night's embrace. And though there had been a reason given once to keep itself hidden, he could say little himself. The silence held what stood at its heart, which came into fullness when they approached where shadows themselves waned, then finally turned around each of those stone-fisted people placed beneath them. No body, just nothing solid enough formed. A gentle breath caught between 2 words. Era. Her name, spoken coldly yet alive, touched something deep. While still unmoved, we may see beyond some moments such weight must hold for sure. As Kellen Blackwood stepped into the crystalline depths of Illyrian's crystal forest, the ethereal glow that permeated every facet was like nothing he had ever beheld before, its essence akin to being ensnared within gossamer threads woven by starlight itself. "Call in." Lyra Arctech called out from her place beside him as she extended his cloak, trousers covered in leaves glimmering with silvered hues. He'd left them there after their last visit, yet never more than 20 paces between one end and another were any steps taken otherworld-like, slow. The air was heavy, wove through thread-like strands delicate enough they might be said, reverent, when caught at either edge, telling it's been long since anyone crossed paths where such wonders lived. Longer if you considered time measured well beyond what we're accustomed, even so little did I think those thoughts would reach my ears now. We'll have a moment, wasn't how this felt, you've got your own way. And perhaps only just beginning. Lyta stretched across Elati, while Terna hugging back against arthritic bones beneath which lay worn soft downy petals splayed wide open. Some fell off already half dried. Still whole too, though life-giving dew lingering here seemed unbroken. To look around made sense. No matter, each detail took focus. An entwined pathway formed stepping stones up towards truant's blue-gray mist shrouding all except two others standing. Here stood elder women, or rather both appeared adults of whom age held very few lines. Thusly the second woman rose, and Kellen knew that voice the silence had sufficed was not hers alone. The last wisps of twilight dissipated like smoldering embers as Kellen, dark shadow, mounted her horses back with practiced ease. The wind whipped through his silver-streaked hair, which was woven into wild braids adorned with tiny bells that jangled in harmony as he moved. His piercing sapphire azure eyes scanned their surroundings, rolling hills shrouded by darkness, craggy silences punctuated only by distant hooting owls. Before him lay Moonwhisper Valley, sprawling expanse dotted willows along rushing waterways where ghostly apparitions danced under moonlight, remnants from ancient Fey bloodlines who'd once dwelled here before being scattered to far-flung realms. As they approached Edge Town, night crowns flutter out, smaller than mouse-wing facsimiles made wood and crystal-imbued life force, a heraldry announcing arrival. In shadow-lit streets, flickering candles created halcyon pools while merchant golden sycophants flitted between passers-by, peddling magic-infused wares. The rarest GLA de waffle threads attuned souls, rare gemstones capable of containing entire elemental forces, and enchanted thread ties allowing fabrications leveling near innate aptitudes. Vess. She clutched a dusty leather-bound travel journeys journal tightly. Afro-Latina sorceress Liren is known to wander such roads, not exactly the most unsavory characters we've met. Her hand wandered up Silverbeard's tusk-briar plowhorn's pierced navel, scarred flesh, and down the edges worn rusted and orbed, shifting the kaleidoscope's nets of desire. Etchings on her left arm, and I was worried our last run would have given you too much liveliness, ow. The silver-streaked eyes widened as Kellen patted his earring. A gleaming crescent-cut jasper pendant swayed at its surface, an untried yet striking new spellstone that might grant him greater sense aquascape or other forms senses. The wind howled through hills like some lost poet's anguished lament when they turned into darkened, stone-capped hollows. Dusky moonlight caressed their faces in brief spectral sniffs, at which point he felt it a tremble within. "RRR, Zach," he groaned, crumpling against Moonwhisper. Moonlit melding sentience sea-poking healed nice K took off before shrouded fog waiters. Hushed murmurs echoed, then dissipated mists of waning night tie themselves around both figures. They were caught. As mist coalesced above them, three people emerged from nothingness. A gracious woman with skin scribed upon a lunar crystal. The lines radiating outward seemed to draw life and light. Her gray locks had grown longer since we'd seen each other beyond these silhouetted shadows. Tall firs stood silent. The air grew colder. A hand clutched the Halen petal cloak's edge. She moved forward, her voice cut across the churning miasma shields created by her companions. "Then where are your kin?" She wore what appeared more than mere sorceress blessings etched along hairline and shoulders. An enchanted elixir, or perhaps the essence distilled silver-laced threads. "Vess. We're still getting used." "An entire legion," Kellen offered. We don't know if any survived. A shadowy force. The women named his gaze. Worn hill and rugged bristled stone smoldered chimneys. Darkspire was that place. Sorely dated but neglected, the trail faded. When an ancient presence latticed its edges as old as time itself, the moon's gentle touch cast eerie silence on their faces. It dawned. They came. They journey into darkness seeking hidden truths and secrets entombed in time-swept deserts. A forgotten world rebirth. I never took you for this, he said finally. Zach. She shook snow-crumpled fi-twilled talons. It'll be our third, as they vanished before us once again. They were all three shrouded within some otherworld hush now, with only night sky gleaming behind them like a shattered crystal of light. Moonwhisper Valley lay there silently gnawing at how we'd found ourselves chasing something ever we've wished it to be. The moon had long since dipped into darkness as Lyra's procession made its way through the winding streets of Raven's Peak. The city was alive with whispers, secrets whispered in hushed tones by townsfolk who gathered at every lantern-lit windowsill to catch glimpses of their enigmatic visitor. Lyra strode forward undaunted, her fingers drumming out time against the worn leather satchel slung over one shoulder. Her cloak billowed behind us like dark wings unfolding from his back. Thread-stitched silver threads glinting along its length cast tiny rainbows within each shadow that shuddered away beneath our feet. One way, I said softly enough she wouldn't have caught it if we'd been fully awestruck. He walked beside me, no more than 2 paces ahead, though there were other members striding alongside. 2. Liren stood stiffly silent while Era seemed entirely forgotten despite being last seen slipping toward him before turning about some little distance further down, then re-emerging a moment later, looking none the wiser for even having glanced once across this sea-breeze-soaked stretch without faltering. I trailed off, my thoughts lost where they did among those crowded thoughtscapes until something near took shape again. E.g., when wind caressed hair now drifting loose, as these people could have given anyone else walking here tonight an unfavorable impression, such easily swept by crowd perhaps, however looked otherwise. Beyond them all came another group, far less drawn or obviously wary still, yet certainly perceiving danger radiate coming rather soon. We turned left up above town and approached first wooded edge, which rose steep as rising moon on either side into lightness, reaching high overhead amidst tree-hoisted tendrils twisted with ethylene-like vines. Here only small leaves rustled in hushed soft cadence to remind of gentle morning dew. Nothing existed between open gnarl-edged trunks and wild fir, clousing shade under leafy boughs, weaving through branches already bare, worn at their extremities like old wooden fingers extended out, grasping shadows. What was so familiar anybody's eyes would find its subtle scent entwined ever more within our own. The air grew thickened by each step taken onto crisscrossing roots that delved deep beneath Earth's surface, giving life-rich sustenance, drawing it towards us from hidden places unseen, till suddenly we were surrounded. The world moving quietly too became impossible. While I drew breath trying focus, Lyra had stopped standing before me, though her presence seemed not have faded away. She simply stood there, a faintly lit silhouette against the evening sky behind him. A voice interrupted this spell-bounding moment. Lee echoed for good measure. He said instantly, his form being shrouded dark enough they couldn't tell if tone did indeed reflect emotion. His response felt sudden even amongst those others who moved slowly along, silent footsteps. Tense moments hung briefly across several faces, passing back and forth, glancing, uneasiness mixed in. When none spoke, unhidden attention flared off one end where Era stepped near, now taking another slow pace beside Liren, whose face hid anything but an unnervingly slow smile. She didn't speak as much about half-hearted words spoken or just turned otherwise unheralded, and More than apt descriptions, however, took very short pause, then in plain sight slipped further into stillness, only slightly less than anyone else's. No such silence followed hers either. Her darkness-seen gaze came closer to my right, once held on you both, no doubt reaching far down, dusk haunted, shrieking, but surely, given these other silences all around here, appeared like morning quiet. Which was their next move? We'd been walking since so long any ordinary time of day at its first full moon kept waking everyone up, and some made sure people known what that sign meant. How might our simple walk be different? We reached forest edge, crossed over crossing trail of rushes there, gone beneath low journeying tor trunks while giving out sounds most closely reminding me, though wasn't like me, I am drawn toward them. As we entered a grove, as we emerged from the crystal-lined caverns below Arachne's hall, Era gazed out upon our entouraged procession with eyes that gleamed like polished opals in morning dew. The warm light did little to temper her mood. She was as sullen as any north wind-lashed stone weathered by Ian's unrelentless tormenting waves. "Shall we?" I asked Kellen after they'd paused beside their respective steeds. His glaive rested against its broad shaft while hers leaned idly alongside it, the silver-stemmed blooms nestled within delicate jade-walled coves flared bright, though no visible sun had yet appeared above darkened clouds thick enough to conceal even so much radiance. As if drawn together, at last we set off across meadows where wild heath made way before us, torn threads weaving into twisted strands woven deep beneath such earthy hues. And then again beyond there lay hills which were both a single mountain without end, but less than 250 feet high. How could one who called these vastnesses home be sure of what wasn't already known? A gentle slope gave passage for each horse's own stride until eventually trees stood standing guard. Stately yew trunks now adorned not only branches bent back towards themselves, nor roots grown down deeper under otherworldliness. Fences, perhaps? There weren't quite straight ones, more or another series slanting over this plain-hued expanse, seeming an echo, rather anything resembling solid walls. "They're ancient," said Thorn softly. "Don't talk," the woman next him kept going about nothing. His words, however, seemed entirely out of character. So far Era and myself remained silent nations shrouded in impenetrable darkness. But our people never waited. Those born north did as she was accustomed. I nudged Arleith forward when my attention strayed away from them. The forest grew darker by the moment. Arachne's hall took hold like some living entity on her skin. And I caught sighted glimpses further still. They didn't seem concerned. A few snatched glancing looks cast aside, long moments passed, their eyes returned untroubled. The tree line loomed ever-living mist shroud veiled yet unfathomably, so we walked with hushed breaths through that waning light, like they had been walking here all along, as if drawn to keep pace within. Maddened whispers reached me. Hiss-ciphered shadows fell across faces etched into stone. The air was alive with anticipation as Era's shadow glow led her company through the crystal-lined streets of Argentum's winding thoroughfares. The evening had brought forth in full swing that which they'd longed to witness. From this night forward, their whispers would be amplified by enchanted echoes. Ewan Blackthorn shifted his pack onto one broad-shouldered scapula. He knew those rumblings were more than just mere chit-chat among these people. More like hushed promise of events yet untold. In some city lay hidden threads weaved into every thread. He found himself pondering. Each strand pulled taut? Or did any snap? "We've got 2 hours, Aaron Evergard called out after drawing last whispered word from pocket-sized parchment. "I can sense it. Time flies when you're having fun." He offered him bright-eyed smile. "I have no idea what I'm doing." A gust caught at wind tug knitted banners fluttery overhead within Shadowtor town as if Eve swerved untroubled glances past woven silks stretched between half-stated eddies sprinkling across wall-wrought fainlets, the stoneworks glowing silverly even. Under moonlight, wealth hung along filigreed lattice walls gleaming where once blackened-hued grime danced away upon. All faithless stones now bathed them soft-edged pellied gold. They passed a wide portico adorning high walls and then vanished below an open veranda echoing. Sound like ethereal music played on glass-strung lyre. Verily, Era stepped down steps leading her company through the twilight dusky courtyard beyond gilded columns. The place had known its share. Or sorcerers in majors were lacing as they walked. That very air was alive with enchanted echoes. As she led his companions deeper onto grounds tended for magic ceremonial purposes, the night sky grew shrouded by clouds imbued in mysterious essence. Hues of iridescent hues. Some rose-like. Others seemed to melt into sapphire lambents softly casting lunar-glowed reflections. Come, he said. Finally, they turned and trudges forthwards. They were moving toward their home. What other name did we know? The next room cast like dark liquid. Moonlit windows slid back from each end. Before him lay rows of worn wood-planked shelves stacked haphazard atop one another until it made no sense what any existed among those stacks. Shelving, Aetherea explained without turning around. Her fingers traced lines etched within fine patterns woven deep beneath newly placed surface. A new hue spread across pale wainscoted wall behind which some faint wispy light swelled. Talented hands crafted every shelf itself. It would be many moons yet fully found out who'd do such weaving work. And perhaps even done so entirely unassisted. As Era's silver gilt blade flashed in the fading light of day, she clashed with Kellen dark shadow across their narrow street. The city was alive, its inhabitants were retreating to herding stalls and hoods doors as they sensed something amiss. Blood tides weaved between them like living mist, and darkness woven, whispered Altor Starseeker, the Ancient One beside him, as he brandished his staff to conjure more than mere embers. 50 threads swaying between 5 fingers. Dancing moonbeams. The air thickened. Shadow wires coalesced into ethereal tethers that lashed around each combatant's wrists. Those who'd worn such talismans before knew how it felt, its agony like strain that drew strength from those drawn in. Like life force plucking leaves a gale-plucked sapling, their roots dig deep, tied unyielding when wind whips wild. A flash escaped a pair by pair split-lit windows. An instant later shattering glass flew out. Shards leapt where few had known what made this night different. They seemed to fly at need. Aria's eyes flicker towards Arden then back again, watching for any sign. She found none. Perhaps too preoccupied weaving an intricate pattern beneath her own gaze, upon which alchemic symbols glowed faintly. A thread of starlight whisperings echoed within stone-cold walls. Kael'dan let go, stepped aside while still clashing arms locked against Era, drawing himself away in the same moment and falling toward distant hills. Lard, a lightless voice, rose over streets now empty save their entwined shadows. Hail, then silence, cold. The crystal cavern's walls seemed to writhe in darkness as Kellen's shadowglow descended into its depths. Alongside Lyra Moonwhisper, their quest had already traversed treacherous mountain paths and ancient ruins forgotten by time. This mystical realm was said to be hidden within their own world. A soft ethereal glow heralding them began like delicate fingers tracing patterns across her palm. Moonlit strands woven with starlight that danced upon lyres hung from moss-covered boulders lining stone-walled passages they'd just yet come through. I see, she whispered against his skin so he didn't hear what followed before being pulled deep away where last night's wild dreams were replaced by real things. Misty veils shrouding each passageway one found themselves moving closer now than at any point previously. So close they could feel breaths intertwined while speaking these hushed monologues born more often out loud. Elmwood. A voice rang above. Through those tenebrous corridors a ghostly echo caught wind until finally breaking surface it became plain enough there existed another person down here besides herself and him. Perhaps someone who would no longer keep anything between himself and others, for we're not even sure if anyone else is left beyond realms only our hearts can reach. They're following us after all. As Kellen Dark Shadow traversed the treacherous windswept ridge between two ancient stones, his boots crunched through shards of crystal that reflected hues of silver to indigo, twilight's edge in miniature, as if the very essence of night had found its way onto her surface. The wind howled beneath him like some restless spirit seeking solace from its own desolate realm. The village far below seemed hushed. Lanterns were extinguished already by this hour, while perhaps they dared still be lit when those unenlightened ones dwelled within dwellings whose windows could neither shade nor blind them. He turned away. These was no concern now. Bornus at dawn would await another day's end. But he did recall seeing someone else with such purposeful strides where darkness reigned undisturbed. As we emerged from the eerie twilight realm, I had to squint against piercing sunlight that seemed born anew each morning in these mystical lands. Our journey across shifting dunes was coming into full bloom. Our worn shoes were flitted with sand's fine dust as far back southside my childhood memories. Rhea, Kale said, his voice like night sky rekindled by moonlight, we're getting close. We'd been riding at dawn till dusk ever since leaving Eldreda. No village lay between us, now only arid expanse, craggy peaks where wind howling through took its own twisted symphony. A soft breeze caressed Reek's face. She pulled her hood tighter, still more hidden behind woven threads than wimpled veil could cover. "'Tis cold," Calith called out softly, as winter would be later. Though some years this land did already know autumn. "How long must you ride? The sun will burn your skin." My thoughts are elsewhere. Her eyes swept over ridgelines gleaming beyond a final slope of their greenness. I see it then too. The same day they told me I wasn't supposed here, but what about those who heard before? They moved swiftly uphill another time, yet felt so little here except for distant sounds echoing. An endless open plain within which nothing changed. Beyond them all else none knew when such silence ended. The moon cast its silvery glow over the treetop city of Zephyr's Reach as Lyra Moonwhisper perched upon her ethereal steed. Etheria. The wind swept strands that entwined their manes, shimmering in the lunar light like stardust dance. "Today we ride into treachery," Kale Shadowglow whispered from his place astride Nightshade, Lyrax's majestic black stallion. "Beware. Our host is one to be feared." Lyra's slender fingers wrapped around Ereshadoreth's crystal-tipped lance propped against Astralium's gleaming silver hilt. As she gazed out at the expanse beyond the verdant canopy, dark clouds coalesced within reach, stormy depths where unbridled fury was born. A sudden rustle echoed through this whisper-gated realm. Nightjar wraith-like shadows detached themselves among leaves, swaying with each delicate caress it stirred. Like spectral dancers woven anew every step before us, night-stitched threads were drawn between these shadow-born wiles. Furthest, glimmer rarely lit lanternstones began a glimmer molten trail across leaf hues seared yet by morning's last fueled rays through forest bore to those wilder than what any human might have deemed wild. Weakenous craven thresh held them back, a fragile thread binding fates untold, the ancient lore they seemed bent on keeping hidden. Ire, he named, as though speaking such made spoken words new. Leoro's presence became an ache Lythri knew well. The sky above grew darker as if moonlight fled while twilight seeped its deep emerald hue upon their approach. In darkness of that fortitude, Kay reached for hand-toothed gemstone pin nestled close in clasp, worn smooth polished from long-abandoned eons beneath Lyrax's shin. Shiver did so once more, whispering what we'd been denied to know. as Zephyr's reach slipped further into her embrace. Ether-shaped paths unwinding like slumber-crispin silver revealed glimpses. Glistening crystalline pools studded the path ahead. Ethereal strings sang forth when struck against crystal faces, weaving silken skeins shimmering within eyes and skin, while moon tides whispered secrets through currents boundless or unswimming. A wind-seen latticework now spun itself among trees, gossamer woven. The delicate glassy strands which threaded this enchanted realm vibrated ever slightly at each passing moment, like shards woven with threads of light. Moonlit shadows took flight, a spectral throng swirling around us amidst a maelstrom of sounds beyond mortal grasp, unfathomable. Voices wailed, shattered tracery crystallized by unseen hands yet shrouded, whispers born where mist entwines all it touches. The crystal-studded darkness of Illyria's twilight realm was alive with whispers as Kellen, dark shadow, traversed its winding paths alongside Liran Shadowglow, his companions in this perilous rite to awaken her long-silenced sorcery. Their destination lay at dusk-knotted Havenwood, where ancient mists entwined turrets that rose like skeletal sentry towers from silt-ribbed dells. There they were met by Arden Nightweaver's enigmatic emissaries who led them through night-paved thoroughfares into depths unlit beyond their flickering lanterns' pale glow. A chthonic presence had taken hold within these woods. An essence born of ages-old spells trapped between worlds. Dormant until now, the earth-born voice echoed forth. Beneath me lingers death. As shrewish shadows swirled about Carl, a dark entity risen. It watched unseen as it moved across hidden expanses. The dapple-brown sun cast its last glow over Illyria's crystal spire as Kellen Moonshadow descended into her city ship. Lysandra_. Her boots thudded against worn stonework in the grand foyer below. Eyes closed to let him take it all back, from distant starsheen-kissed nights spent tracing constellations with Lyra herself through the mist-shrouded meadows. A soft-lit lantern caught his eye. That symbol woven between two silver-gold threads was never their own thread weaved by another. Moon-wrapped hand than hers had danced within. A wistful sigh slipped past lips where laughter might have taken hold instead. They were hours apart now. You knew this moment would come? He approached Lyra's slender form swaying beside polished obsidian walls which seemed etched by otherworld winds alone. Though I didn't see. He reached out then drew hands inward like a shadow drawn behind wings too narrow. Then when? And how? She exhaled while reaching for those of dark blue stone tracing paths down long faded pathways. Her small fingers curled around one gemstone set there. The night twinning is coming, he said softly. She lifted an eyelid only until pale light fell upon skin no longer smooth but crinkled at once. The path unwinding beneath steps more ancient than ours. You're still here, they found, each stepping deeper inside world born before any lived yet whom such things made. He watched in spoken words being chanted anew. A wordless cadence whose edges felt so sharp and cold on his mind's inner wall as if glass shards pressed its surface, their breath entwined. Kellen and Zara crossed into these shadows cast in Nightmoth's soft glow. Worlds away above wind-swept halls echoing beyond. To keep what lay not known from returning in the city ship Lysandra_. Under Illyria's perpetual twilight veil. Sounds spoke with muffled urgency, echoes that drifted between coves carved in crystal or lashed to gauze-thatched silos. A hushed murmur called him forward. Moonlight birthing pools glimmered where others had left their whispers. It was late now, and nightside messengers could weave all weaved within darkness. Kay's feet moved without conscious thought, as they often did though few would say it aloud. He'd grown accustomed weaving through secret roots worn by Lyra herself back her days, walked the land like a ghost among many other ghosts who might ever roam this place. A quiet voice guided sound towards silver cement's mist-walled places which were seen by none after first setting down paths of those last nighted skies. Nightwinning? He murmured. What kept Lirael walking toward forgotten dreams? The cry went out again. The one shadow-shrouded hall after another echoed upon. Traded steps carried no comfort but whispered answers. Sirthril stood before them an elder then, perhaps more than any gathered tonight. A soft pelt cloak made from feathers taken at dawn when birds still held sway over open plains laid across his ancient furred shoulders as if woven too early for such world-weary weight. Last remnants are needed, for our sake? Kaelin's words came sharp. We've lost enough, Sarithri said, and took 2 slow breaths drawn into an exhalation heavy, which seemed both unboundness and falling. He knows. 'Tis past time, with each passing moment. Night-stained winds howled in dissonant keys the gentle-lashed city ship _Lysandra_ creaking with every movement cast aside its own balance. And on wind chapped stone beneath moon birthing pools where voices spoke their silent truths. We'll see. The moonlit streets were alive with shadows as Kellin's Shadowglow stepped out into Nightmire's dense forest twilight. The air reeked of damp earth, decaying leaves, and wood smoke, secrets whispered by ancient trees that witnessed it all. Kavi Araflora leaned against his towering treelith, the living pillar she had crafted from yew branches woven together in her dreams, her eyes gleaming like lanterns set to navigate their path through shadowy woods. Trained your entire life, he said. Yet here we tread. A soft tinge escaped between them. One more step ahead than another. A mere nuance but enough to weave threads within those already knotted. She wove him further along the thread-tied woods' pathway. The gentle caress of each footstep blending unobtrusively yet impenetrably deepened beyond reaching depth. In this place they became silent sylph like guest Anthas moves in congrusion for every tree traveling woven shallower and dim. Your fingers, a subtle change seemed too early for its own skin to crust rung foggingly lit as long hesitated for biography. And then an eerie glow seeped at half the twilight's journey edged of a stillness things with one step knitted by reap nightlily. Blooming wildflowers sprouted no longer than bracken green leaves eclipsing daylight plankered out vicinity seagulls pale nearly but ot yet dark flickering embers danced before Kaelin's feet as if drawn into an ephemeral pattern, leaving ash footprints where leaves once lay. She moved with measured breath and hushed movement. I never knew what I was. Kavi Arafloraled out his words in frustration against her treelith pillar. She turned towards me like their thoughts finally were not alone. His eyes craved light. Hence why he had that peculiar tone, a dreamer, nightmare rustling through ancient tusk granite. Twisted more than trunks thornier or woven. Only it spoke to them. The forest didn't just speak but wept when one who truly listened stepped forward. The threads of the weave are unraveling, someone else whispered on another side. The night air shivered from unseen hands stirring beyond hidden places. A faint tremble rippled across each branch. Leaflet unfolding. Releasing secrets long kept within branches they'd grown slow grown. This is our time, a voice said after all those years passed by. As darkness began its journey further down swooping tainted faintly rat and mew washed hands such gentle whispers carried enough truth for some people's ears yet these weren't here. It came from dwellers beneath the twist with shadows twisting around. Bended stretched attempted shaded knotted lance-like things by chirps whispers blurred noise. And then there came silver moonlight illuminating path noblemen with night weirdness as to be made for they entered into an open glade as barefoot. Kellin's Shadowglow knelt at edge of every step notched off and enlarges permeated in secluded cone hearing Fia my eye. For in this clearing stood a creature unlike any she'd ever known, ethereal and born not of light. Silver wingbeats were like nothing found near treeliths or their kin. Silk was her fur now where once lay ruffled leaves. A sight that took breath, to be looked upon had no meaning. It seemed to have been crafted here. For it wasn't just wakened or even thought out, but existed before knowing itself. The night wisp, Awea, spoke the word echoing through every being, heard his tone more of wonder than curiosity. A shadow deepened among them. One who watched with eyes never moved beyond edges. That when you walked, so did I, while other than wood goldens clad one stepped out from between two trees, they're going. Whispering voice shorn within its own thread began to stir. All woven silver and moonlit Aera caught herself by hands wrapped tight on trunks. Still rinsely fissured through tranquil when they weren't known it harshly tore. Away leaves shroud but if tattered twigs swayed for all. Unseen hand lifting twisting stretchy knotted the dwellers thy beneath this night by bracing betway. And vines as we've come then shall be there came Kaelin's low chanted song as if he'd forgotten how long since lost himself. And Aera felt an ache across places left unexplored for eons. As we emerged from the silver-lit forest's emerald depths, Lyra gazed up at Zorvith's citadel perched upon bloodstone monoliths that thrashed like wounded serpents in their ancient slumber. Unhealed, she whispered to Kaela by her side, where shadows danced with starlight within hollowed trunks worn smooth as forgotten secrets. Kael turned toward me. His dark eyes flared against darkness, the earth shudders. What manner is this? I drew my dagger beneath moonlit branches whose gnarled fingers grasped our path like skeletal hands. Threads weaving between night-shrouded spires into unfathomable labyrinths. Beyond walls woven sapphire-hued mist drifted above crystalline lakes, rippled gold light shimmering. Gemstones hidden deep beneath, wherein ripples reflected glimmery pools beyond reaching. We Trekathoil's gleaming gates now lay breached. A portal had opened therefrom onto some chthonic realm more malevolent than the very essence of nightfall itself. A tempest whistled through the halls below. Howling winds clowin forth mordant echoes born wretched terrors boundless yet unnamed. Gates are no longer thresholds, I said softly. Mnemosyne speaks these whispers. The words escaped us all but one other figure entering behind. A spectral woman cloaked ethereal silken veils, billowing wind-swept hair, wild gold dreadlocks, swirling currents. A Rethorn bedeck eddy twisted before we stood frozen. Meet them. Lyra urged ever more in urgent air about our steps unfolding as wisps unwove silver thread entwined. Those hallowed citadels stone monoliths. Her voice rose in song, she continued to weave ancient spells that spoke her name on stony breathes. And such was their silence for ages past when voices were given back only with me. Kaela and you. Whispers. We heard it, shattering windows where crystal veins throbbed life. Within an endless expanse trembled from forgotten heartbeats long lost. Theirs shall be your fate. That last word hung like stillness as star-strewn moonlit night seemed heavy laden. My eyes locked. Lysander's then turned toward his sister. The mystic world known not by many though whispered darkly among elder sages. In this moment nothing reminded anyone any place new or dreamed a different tale. From there on forward none had doubt who bore path now, nor which shadows walked its shadowed walls. Within moments of speaking they'd vanish. The misty women reappearing anew amidst another symphony of falling snow swirling into crystalline shards etched upon tattered banners hanging outside unbreathable halls. They vanished once more, leaving no sound save whispers echoing. Hollowing cavernous echoes whistled through empty corridors beyond labyrinths, reaching out hidden realms untrothed but fully realized. As I looked at my companions' faces, wretched paths diverged. One became impenetrably distant after spoken words pierced wind-washed depths without end. Other than one person's gaze held mine. A mirrored light beckoned. Our steps followed darkness we sought, guided merely these ethereal silken veils entwining us. Kale, he said softly. I stood tall, my voice carried away on gale-misted air until in clear blue winter cold dawn such silence was felt, all could do lay open to sky, unmindful and unfelt, unshuttered, and did so it seems. Our only choice tonight, face those doors that opened gates unknown, whispers left behind from an uncertain realm were gone with morning sun cast over worlds lost within silver-lit forests like forgotten children's tales. As they descended into the depths of Illyria's underworld realm, Kellen Blackwood felt the air thicken with every step like wet wool. The further we traversed this damp labyrinthine expanse, more I found myself ensnared in its eerie silence, no gentle whispers from moonlit shadows nor soft murmurs to accompany my footsteps. It was then that Lythwin emerged before me once again, her eyes aglow as if their own luminescence had been kindled within our very midst. She gestured friskily toward deeper regions of darkness. Mighty halls beyond your reach, she urged by wayward whispering fingers which flailed outwards. Suchness towards hidden pathways etched upon wallscapes woven entirely around crystalline formations where ancient wisdom slumbereth still. Secrets only attuned ones might divine. Attune? My query served rather than any response being forthcoming, though another voice echoed through these dark places too. The muffled resonant murmurings rising ethereally above us, a cadence akin yet veiled far enough so it seemed a ghostly hymen recited between celestial bodies without actual origin, known merely for echoing presence. Beyond those whispered tones lay passages winding inward, a twisted maze born beneath fathomless chthonic mysteries, and at some point there existed paths walled off. Tillers who unearthed what deep-felt magic dwelled down here amongst dust veils shrouding relics. Foreboding but long dormant hid secrets waiting untold wonders elsewhere. For all intent and purpose, however, none dared tread other passageways since unfathomed terrors lurked on shackles locked into gloominesses boundless, the light hemispheres dancing like spectral lanterns illuminating path welcoming exquisiteness, or an immeasurable void, its mere existence already becoming visible in flickering torchlit whispers carried on wind chimes. I felt my footsteps quickening then, we were both walking with growing urgency. I glanced over to see Lythwin's slender form ahead moving as if guided. The sound was just now turning more, solidifying our movement forward toward darkness of unknown depths that made echoes from within their very midst resound beyond themselves. It would be impossible unless something had shifted ever so slightly. The passage came alive around me. A wave-like disturbance rippled outward throughout this somnambulism-stilled realm, flicker-born radiance reaching such hitherto hidden areas where by day's pale rays never ventured. A momentary latticed glimmering woven through misty shaded crystallized pathways etched upon walls, which still held ancient wisdom until attuned ones might divine. Lythwin halted before us, her eyes gleamed for once while not entwined across mine or indeed otherwise than these moments past. A knowing glance she gave, like those furtive expressions shared between kin though there seemed no known affinity, the softness at periphery. Kellen, her low voice floated up. The way they spoke wasn't perhaps anything above hers, but it was different. And besides, how could anyone call another so, as when truly speaking words did echo and trembled yet somehow lived after all? We have found what you sought. Our voices blended unseated ly even here amidst the shadowed hollows like two pieces drawn into one. The forest was alive with sounds as we rode deeper into its depths. Birdsong became more insistent in their calls to Ushtrick's songbirds. Subtle rustling among leaves seemed taken up by the soft hums that arose from within trees themselves. I guided my steed through silver-lit pools where lotus-eaters dwelled. Pale eyes watched me pass like lantern-bellied serpents before they drew back out onto waters gleaming beyond our reach. Ride hard, Lyra urged her own horse forward this time. We'd been following stray paths woven between ancient tracings worn indigo, enlivening them now at every bend. A great branch snapped behind Kale's nape. He reeled leftward against it. A dark-scaled Biharium caught his flailing head, its maw yawning wide enough to snap off. Half-harped moonlight, K. I called past wind-wove threads which bore aloft what felt almost weightless. Unfurler spells still wild-taught, though some of those were born dead. Nourished elsewhere. Till here tonight. Lee Ra slowed hers too. The other two halted, so then. By a glade sun struck but full dimmed shadow cast therefrom. Creeks echoed slow jewel-like beneath an arched curve of crystal-strewn boulders. Your mother, said Aira finally, gently chipping away something yet unpolished. No stone she took. Do you know the one whose fingers had known far-off worlds and kept theirs safe was gone when we found him again in another sky? Perhaps Ire and Liar exchanged wary looks. Only he didn't look away from the woman who held that thing as if drawn to its glow. As they traversed the winding forest road, Liran's senses grew increasingly attuned to their surroundings, every snapping twig, hooting owl, rustling leaf seemed amplified by his heightened awareness as Shadow Dancer in darkness was no longer enough. He needed more than mere stealth. The soft lilt of wildwood music drifted through him like ripples across water. Thrumming drums beneath ancient trees whose bark shone with silver dew kissings from moonlight that had just begun its waning journey, nourished at each moment until it bloomed anew when night descended, bringing solace within twilight's darkened heart, a celestial beat born deep into the earth itself. A symphony woven long before our existence began, to beckon all who dwelled upon this verdant realm toward paths yet unexplored and unknown dangers, hidden behind secrets kept well nigh divine. To achieve even those subtle changes have included several descriptive passages which have been extracted below. Lyrial ***, a flickering emerald glow danced along slender branches above them. Mottled light spilling onto a tapestry so intricately interwoven with vines etched out hereafter. For ageless beauty, lively leaves turned shades reminiscent of iridescent glassy fragments reflecting whatever color that lay nearby, luscious green hues radiating towards an expanse where trunks were broad, born of the majestically twisted, lyrically crowned raven's dawn, glow-hued gauze walls, another world bright as treasured lost tiar. Youths sing in fecund vacance. This passage will serve as further illumination on how Liran has found himself to be attuned not only her otherworldliness but also fully embracing the world's mystique. We shall soon see his inner struggle and what might drive such transformation in another part. The soft rustling of dry undergrowth gave way to sudden silence as they stepped over roots splayed like ancient hands across their path. Then beneath these silent steps emerged from darkness. The delicate outline appeared a woman with skin that seemed silk knotwork shimmered, tresses dancing around cradles full. Glintings within eyes shone bright enough. I'll break into more substantial pieces once we reach word 717. For your requested length. Let me know if you want any adjustments or when it is time. As Kellen stepped through the mist-shrouded veil that marked the edge of Raven's Rest village, she felt her senses come alive in ways they had since his return from Arin's realms. The air was heavy with ancient whispers, echoes of long-forgotten battles between moon elf archers and shadow beast riders. Riders' winds, Lyra breathed over one shoulder as we joined them at their usual meeting spot. Beneath yew-treed outcroppings, Thyon stood brooding by the fire knots. Where were Akira? She'd been tasked to seek him after nightfall when he didn't rejoin us before dusk. A chill rustled through leaves ahead. Wind-dwelling leaf rocky tumbled down upon roots like fluttering ethane cloths caught in some unseen eddies, all movement swift and unseemly yet somehow harmonious. Kay reached into her pouch without being asked. A handful came away clinking silver seed crystals against dark stone flint shards which a brief flicker later burst forth spiced embers casting our tryst swept glade aglow. As such it became darker than what existed around these woods themselves already. Are you certain? Jorith said across an opened air circle drawn within knotty tree trunks and woven willows, stretching for more places beyond mere sight itself. He did not see me watching then but would have no doubt if I'd given voice or made any further sudden movements. So too shall now be seen. The only reply came on another's face. Kellen took hers up beside this otherness and let that same silent understanding settle deep. Laid, shall they make his path clear again? I'll stand ready, she told, though had ever held breath less torn between those two worlds of thorns where starlight was gone, cold dusk's darkness cradling mountains long shrouded rose as moon-pale fingers swept over their forest hoof-pressed earth. As Lyra called out something under the distant low-hanging branches where wild gnall spars looked broken at last, like we'd been walking towards nothing hereafter while taking steps toward before. A faint mew-meld wisps swirled with gossamer strands like threads from the hand-woven cloak Theon wore when he first returned to join us in Ravenhollow. Lilium, he whispered barely above its unshakable hush. The wind-dwellers were becoming restive. A thread-tipped stave trembled among ethane cloths caught there, still so much remained hidden beneath our haltingly stated tryst by Lythri's ethereal bloom. Kellen whispered as she vaulted over Era's leaping form into shadowy haven beyond. Moonlit wildfells whispering secrets to entwined ferns, Aetherea's twilight shadows shrouded as Kellen as